Greetings, brothers and sisters. And so, my wife and I were talking about quail. We saw quail when I lived in the western part of the country, and we thought about raising quail or having quail on our farm, something we might do in the future. And I remembered this coverage of Dick Cheney shooting his friend in the face going quail hunting. And I remember the coverage on The Daily Show, and I asked my wife if she ever saw the video, and she hadn't. And so we watched it, and at the end of the video, I discovered something. I saw something that was, what people consider predictive programming about CV, in this case. So this is important to the context of what I'm going to talk about here. What some people call predictive programming also can have another explanation, a divine explanation.
What difference does it make? The bullets are already in the man's face. Let's move forward across party lines as a people to get him some sort of mask.
And so he's talking about the guy who was shot, right? Let's move across party lines to get the guy some sort of mask. And then right after saying that, he says this.
Hindsight is 20/20, John. As well.
Hindsight was 20/20. So he's talking about getting the guy a mask, and then he says 20/20, which, became the year that masks became mandatory.
Some sort of mask is 20/20. Some sort of mask is 20/20. Some sort of mask is 20/20.
So for most people in the truth community, they would consider this predictive programming, that the people that control the system put some sort of foreshadowing or some sort of, narratives embedded into a Simpsons cartoon or a movie to train the subconscious mind of the people, these people watching the viewer, so that they accept these things when they come to pass, that they, almost have like a deja vu moment because they've seen it before, they've seen events before unfold, and so they are, readying the people to accept these, psychological operations or whatever it might be that they're going to do in the future. And that may be true. Then you have people on the left or people who believe in science or whatever, lefties, some, scientific people who are atheists or agnostic or whatever. They don't believe in God. And they believe in chaos, and they believe these things are just random. They believe the universe is chaotic. They don't believe that there's a plan, and they don't believe that people are controlling these sorts of things, even though they themselves are trying to control the chaos. I mean, all the people that believe in this are people who are heavy on control, right? The left is heavy on control. The government's heavy on control. The media's heavy on control. I mean, just think about what they're doing now. Like, if they believe in chaos, why are they trying to cancel people, right? If the world is chaotic, if the universe is chaotic and there's no plan, there's no God, it's just random, then why do they think they have, how arrogant are they in a world, a universe full of chaos, that they want to control what other people think and say and do, right? That they think that they have the ability to bring some control to a chaotic universe. I mean, everything that they believe is a lie. That's the thing about the left and scientific people. Not that the right is better. Like, I'm just as irritated at the right as I am as the left, because the right is so full of their lies and their own, imaginative things, including their religion. It's worn down on me over the years. Not that I'm saying the right's better than the left, but the left is, by their very nature, by their very belief system, which is chaos, and their orientation to the world, which is control, they're just a complete fraud and lie. If you believe in chaos, then embrace the chaos. But don't try to bring order to the chaos, because, you can't, right? If it's just random and chaotic. So what they believe in terms of, these predictive programming type of content that's created is it's just random. Like, they believe that if you put monkeys, whatever the saying goes, if you put a room full of monkeys on typewriters, eventually one will type out a classic novel. And that's not true. That's not true, right? They just makes things up. Like, no, that would never happen. Like, it's just something people say, and then other people are like, well, that's scientific fact right there, right? But I'm offering a third possibility, which I believe in. Now, some of it might have to do with the people who control the system. Some of it is intentional predictive programming that they have placed in these, whatever it is, TV shows or movies or whatever. And they have their reason for doing it, whatever their personal motivation. But they are being used by God, right? Not, used in the sense that, in some nefarious way or some bad way. But the divine forces have ways of getting people to do what needs to be done, even though the people aren't working for God themselves. They are, they think they're doing it for their own selfish reason, but the motivation, the information gets, passed through them, and they end up doing God's work even though they're not godly people. They're not devotees. They're not people who want to help God. They're not people who are in it for the big picture. They're not service-oriented. They're selfishly motivated. And so they, oftentimes they'll do what God wants them to do, but they'll also, do it in a crappy way. They'll do it in a way that, hurts the environment. I mean, there's been many cases of this in the past. And the Daily Show itself was used. There was something in the, I covered this a number of times called Future Shock with Samantha Bee, who now has her own show. I'll show, the images I have for that, where they showed there was references to robot sex and transhumanism. This is back in 2005, long before these ideas became, popular and known. It shows this guy getting embedded with a chip, and he opens a lock with his, he has a chip in his hand, and he opens a lock with this chip. And there's just so many things in it, like things that are, I can't remember all the different talking points, but it's 5 minutes long. They got Ray Kurzweil, the guy who invented the scanner and became the head engineer of Google, and he's talking about singularity and transhumanism for years. And they have all of these things. I mean, it's packed full of stuff. And they do it in a comedic way, but it's a way to infuse everybody with this information and get people to accept these things when they roll out the agenda. So I'm watching this. I went through these images. I hadn't seen this in years. And I actually did a follow-up video, and it just never really caught on with people because I don't know. But it was very substantial to me. Because not only are the things that I mentioned about the chipping and things, but Samantha Bee is very sexual with robots and with Ray Kurzweil, and why she's it appears like she's trying to service him in a comedic way, and he's got his hands out like a scissors, and he's cutting her, and then she cuts a baby in half like a doll, right? She cuts a doll baby in half to infuse it with technology. She saws it in half with a hacksaw, and then she is seen in split screen while she's doing that. And so it's all this weird stuff with babies, right? Just, I mean, these are all things that we know about now, and, that's been fleshed out. I mean, we knew about it back then when I made this video, whenever it was in 2011. She duct tapes the baby up, and so there's the MK Ultra stuff where she's seen in a schism type of way, fractured, either by Ray Kurzweil cutting her with scissors, with imaginary scissors with his fingers, or they do a split screen thing. And then there's the baby technology stuff. They have nanobots. I mean, it's a mix of occult stuff, symbolism, Illuminati type of things, as well as all this predictive programming and merging human beings with technology, and then sexualizing all of it, wrapped around in MK Ultra mind control stuff. I mean, it's packed full of things for 5 minutes long, and then it's called Future Shock. And of course, these things now are being accepted. There's her cutting the baby in half with a doll baby in half with a hacksaw. I mean, just really creepy stuff. And then they they cover it in the guise of it being comedic, right? That they're doing comedy. And so it's funny and you can accept it, but so many of these things are being rolled out now. Of course, Samantha Bee has her own very liberal, very hostile show. And so all of these things are, moving forward into the future, a lot of these things have come to pass or they've pushed for them. And of course, there's always this idea of transhumanism, which is a big part of the agenda. And so there's that. And so there is legitimate predictive programming, but on a deeper level, there's a reason for it. And that is the idea that there is a plan is verified through these things. I mean, even the way that I came across this information, right? My wife and I were talking about quail, and this idea in my mind, this idea of this Daily Show. I remember this Daily Show clip. And again, when you're in sort of a free-floating meditative state or when you're open to such things, you will get guided by the divine forces to find things. This is why I can save so much time making videos. Because in a million years, I would have never remembered that there was a mask and a 2020 reference at the very end of this Daily Show clip. In fact, remembering this clip at all, and I only remembered one joke this guy Rob Corddry did at the end of the video. There's some, it's actually one of the better Daily Show clips, and there's a few funny jokes in it. And it's interesting in the standpoint that Dick Cheney shot somebody in the face. The sitting vice president shot somebody in the face in one of these, bizarre, where they drive up in SUVs and they hunt these farm-raised quail, right? They get out of their SUVs and they have these quail that are completely helpless. And they let the quail loose and these guys shoot them. Like it's completely effed up, right? And somehow Dick Cheney couldn't, this guy was a high-end donor to the Republican Party. This group of really rich men, this is, white privilege stuff, like real white privilege, can't manage to pull this off without Dick Cheney shooting somebody in the face, who later apologized to Cheney. The guy who was shot in the face ended up apologizing to Cheney, who never, apologized or took responsibility for, shooting somebody in the face. And so that's all, it's actually just funny in itself that actually happened. But in terms of this idea of there being a plan, like I see it over and over again, by ideas that come to me, and then I'll look something up and I'll find so much information in it that is, some past movie or some random thing that happens to me in terms of, I've made this long video about my daughter Anna. It's like 2 hours long, and there was a copyright issue, which I am seeing to get it reversed, and then I have to think about releasing it. But I was watching this show with my wife called The 12 Monkeys, based on the movie, and there was this huge, profound bit of, storyline that had to do with my daughter Anna. And it wasn't random. My wife and I looked at it, We looked at each other when it was playing out. We're like, wow, that's just bizarre, right? Indication of a plan. Because one of the reasons for predictive programming on a divine level is to let you know that things aren't random, that things aren't chaotic, that there is a reason for everything that's happening. And it is orchestrated and controlled to a certain extent, the narrative. The only variable is people's freedom of choice. And it's really the freedom to choose the wrong thing, to go against the plan. You understand this? That we have the ability to go against the plan. There's infinite wrong choices, and then there's the plan. There's what we're supposed to do. There's what our soul and God wants us to do. And then there's all the things that we, do that are wrong choices, right? And some of those wrong choices lead to an ending that is getting back on the path and doing the right choice, and information is gathered. So, maybe even those choices aren't even wrong choices to some extent, that they were part of a path, right? It just matters whether your soul and God are, if it is the one right choice you're supposed to make. If it's a part of your journey, even though when you look back at it, you regret it, or you're like, I could have saved some time by not making that choice, but maybe you were supposed to go through something, or it's, a way of burning off a samskara. Like, there's no way to really know. And there's, in that is really important. You can have faith and you can have discernment. You can connect to God, like the heartfulness meditation is a system where you use your heart. You learn to use your heart as an instrument to understand what God and your soul want you to do, and you follow your heart. And sometimes the choices that you make following your heart seem strange, and sometimes they seems to cost you on a material level, and they seem to be the wrong choice. But in the end, when you use your heart in this way, an effective way, there's people who say they're following their hearts and they're not. They're following their guts and their egos, and they're saying, they don't even really have a connection with their heart. So it has to be done effectively. But when you learn to use your heart effectively, again, it's always something that you're developing with some humility. And it's not like, I really know, there's no knowing in that sense. Like no concrete black and white yes or no knowing, right? Where you're sure of yourself. There's always going to be some, a little bit of doubt. There's always going to be some sense of humility in this process. And when you effectively are able to, balance all those things, juggle all those different aspects, and use your heart as an instrument to understand, which direction you're supposed to go and follow the path that's laid out in front of you by your soul and God, then there's no mistakes. You're just doing what you were sent down here to do. You're executing your soul's plan effectively. You're fulfilling your purpose. And when I noticed more and more, my wife and I went on a trip, and it was something that was pre-planned, and I'm not going to go into the details about it. And I had that reaction. I was looking at Facebook, and one of my liberal-leaning friends was so proud of her Band-Aid on her arm for something that a medical thing that just happened. And I was noticing, because we were interacting with a lot of liberal people, and what I realized is that the liberal people are so convinced that anything that comes from Trump and so-called Trump supporters, QBs and people on the right, that they feel so superior to. They look at these Trump supporters as being unevolved, right? That are somehow like caveman to their progressive evolution. And so, those people shouldn't have the right to vote. They're, racist and ignorant, and, they believe in God or whatever, way they categorize it. Their religious beliefs and all these things are remedial, and they are so far superior to those people, right? And everything has been so politicized, and like each group is so strongly for or against various things, right? What's being presented. Masks, for example. Like we had an interaction with a liberal person, and that person was very pro-mask, and we said we weren't, and I could feel the judgment immediately, right? It became, obvious that person said, you must be one of these people that they dislike, a Trumper and all these things, which if you've watched my videos, I'm not. And so I talk about both the right and the left, and the right and left paradigm all the time, and how people are all indoctrinated. But they're so, anything that's associated with Trump, any belief, any of the things that are, like anti-mask or any of these types of things, they immediately judge in a way, and it's got to be wrong, because that's the caveman, the unevolved Republicans, the unevolved, Trumpers. So they don't even consider the other argument. They never could believe that the Trumpers and Trump could be right about something. Like that's how polarized it is. But what sucks about it is a lot of these people, these liberal people, like you go to Whole Foods, we went to Whole Foods, and it was one of the most, just regimented places in terms of mask wearing. And a lot of these liberal restaurants, a lot of these healthy restaurants, organic restaurants that are, they're anti-Monsanto, they're anti-GMO, they're, anti-allopathic medicine, many of them. They take herbs, they have these massive amount of alternative medicines that Fauci made fun of. Fauci dismissed as being ridiculous, but they love Fauci, right? It's just completely, mind-boggling that they would, spend all this money on herbs and alternative health care. Many of them don't embrace allopathic medicine at all, traditional medicine, what's now considered traditional medicine. Remember Fauci went on with that, dopey actress, what's in your wallet? Was her name Jennifer Garner? What's in your wallet? She asked about various like elderberry and things, and he said, no, herbs suck. And even though herbs are the basis of even some of these modern medicines, like Valium is based in the pain-killing herb valerian root. So you have these people who don't trust the food system and are, understanding that the food you put in your body, non-organic food, GMO foods, processed foods, are, bad for your health. I mean, liberals are huge on that. So many of these progressive, democratic, liberal people. And then all these alternative medicines that they embrace. And yet they completely trust the, pharmaceutical company and Fauci and the government, when it comes to COVID, because it goes against Trump and Trumpers. I mean, it's just, bizarre. And again, if you believe in chaos theory, if you believe that everything's chaotic and random, then why are you trying to control it? Why don't you just go with the chaos? You can't beat the chaos. If it is chaotic and there's no God, there's no plan, then you can't beat the chaos. You can't bring order to the chaos. Embrace it. Have faith in the chaos. You don't have faith in the chaos. Like, I dislike people who have central beliefs that they spout out of their ghoul holes, but they don't really believe in. And this goes with many truthers here and many, Republican people who they say they believe certain things, and yet they, don't live by those beliefs. Like, they don't have any faith in what they're talking about. They just like to, ramble on incessantly about, or whatever it is, bumper sticker talk as well. But they don't really back up their beliefs. They don't really believe what they say they believe. They don't have faith in it. And you see that now with the liberals here. If you believe in chaos and science believes in chaos and the Big Bang and everything being random, then stop trying to control me, MNFers, right? Then just let the chaos take over. Because you can't control chaos. Like, it's the nature of chaos. You can't bring order to chaos. And if the universe is based in chaos, if the universe at its, one of its foundational principles that it's chaotic and random, then then stop trying to bring order to it. The fact that you want to bring order to chaos means that there must be some sense of a plan somewhere that, it isn't really chaotic. Because if the universe was chaotic, we all would be chaotic all the time. We would just do things randomly. We wouldn't be we wouldn't want control of our temperature. Think about what we can have control of. Climate control in our houses, and the government is pushing for weather control. And we wouldn't, live in the same place. We wouldn't try to own land. Like, that's against chaos. We would wander around like nomads, like animals, right? And we wouldn't we wouldn't even sleep in the same spot because that would be, creating some sort of stability in the chaos. We wouldn't seek stability. We would all be chaotic. We would all embrace the chaos. Like, we would all want chaos all the time. There would be no marriages. There would be, no long-term relationships. Nobody would do the same job for 70 years. Like, all this order. Think about all the rules and laws of government. We're such control freaks as a species, and animals are territorial. Why would animals be territorial if it's chaotic? Why would anything be, want to control the chaos? Because we would embrace it, right? It would be the natural order of things. If the foundation of the universe was chaos, then we would all be chaotic. And yet every species wants some control. Even the smallest animals want some little piece of the pie, and they want to, have some stability in their life, right? We wouldn't eat, the same foods all the time. Like, cows would be eating, animals. Like, cows wouldn't be vegetarians. They wouldn't just eat grass, like, have their pasture lands. I mean, you think about these animals, they love routines. If you have any domesticated animals, like when I go outside and I haven't fed my cow on time, Like both, I've had two sets of cows. The cows we had some years ago when my first homestead, and then the cows here that we have. And I feed these cows a little bit of grain every day and some other things. Hay, the hay is already there. It's for them to eat whenever. But my wife and I slept in, like, I don't know, maybe last week or something. We slept late. And I came out, and our cow was just standing right in front of the front stoop, and glaring at me and mooing. And I didn't have my phone. I wish I had my phone at the time because it was, hilarious. And she had such an attitude because I was an hour and a half late to feed her grain. They get into a very they're all very routine oriented animals. And in our old farm with our cow Phoebe, like Phoebe used to stand at the gate, and if I was late, she just had this attitude, like, dude, you're late. I mean, you could just feel it. She'd be mooing and agitated. And so they're all, all these animals and all these creatures want some routine. They follow routines. People follow routines. The people who control the system are routine oriented because they're creating illusions, and the only way to keep the illusions are going is to repeat the lie over and over again and have everyone else repeat the lie. Because, nature wants to remove things that are dishonest, right? Things that aren't within the bounds of reality. And so when you create lies, there's all this energy to expose the lie, right? There's all this energy to bring truth to the illusion, to shatter the illusion, because it's an abomination of the divine creation. And so there is, a desire for order. And if it was chaotic, it wouldn't be there. And you can see this across the board, right? And, why not allow the coronavirus, the COVID, to run its course? If it's part of the chaos, maybe it's, why are you trying to prevent something? Why are you trying to stop something? Why take healthcare medication at all? Why not just let the chaos roll over you? See, the truth of the matter is, and these people would never admit to it, people who control the system and the so-called, liberals, is they believe that there's an order and they believe that God has a plan. They just don't like it. They, at some level, they can't accept God's plan. They can't be grateful for it. They're complainers. And again, the right wing, a lot of religious people are exactly the same way. They claim to be religious. They claim to be devotees of God, but they're not. They're just faking it. They're convincing of themselves that they're doing God's will, and they're not. There's all these people that claim they're doing God's will, and they're not, right? I mean, this is, it goes both ways. It's on both sides. It's egos who want to have control themselves. It's egos who want to do what they want to do. Even the royal family, claims to be the representative of God. And so all these people want order. They don't believe that it's chaotic, even if they say they do, even if they think they don't believe in God. They do on some level, but they want to be in charge of the order. The new world order, right? It's not the new world chaos. They're rolling out a new world order with so much more control, where they're getting rid of your rights and your ability to say things and censoring you and cancel culture. But they don't want, they don't want that. They don't want chaos, right? And so, embrace what you believe, you science people. There's so much, BS in the science, the religion of science. There's so much that's illegitimate and hypocritical, and it goes against their beliefs. There's all these people who claim to be, believe in the religion of science, but they don't really, right? They're fakers, they're pretenders, they're posers. They think they believe in it, but they believe in their version of it. They don't even really know about science, right? They don't study science. They don't know how science works. They just say, oh, it's science, right? Put on your mask, it's science.
It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask.
And so there's this one comment. It was a platinum comment that goes with all this. So I made a video on Prince Philip, and there was pictures of him, and I was talking about how much of a ghoul he looks like. And I got all these people who are pro Prince Philip, and he's just, I just don't understand why the royal family, on both sides of, the left and the right, the royal family should be condemned by everybody. It's a parasitic group of people that got their power through thuggery, and they claim divine right to rule based on their superior genetics, and they own so much of the earth, 1/6 of the planet's land mass. I mean, premium land at that. I mean, just, but yeah, people love Prince Philip, some of them. And this is what the person says to me: age shaming much, Paul? I can't wait to see what you look like when you're 99. Now that's a commitment. That's a troll that's willing to commit, because I'm, I believe, 56 now. And I think 56, pretty sure 56. And that means it would be 43 years before I'm 99. And the person can't wait to see what I look like then because of this video. Like, are you going to stand by your commitment and sit there and wait, 43 years and see if I look worse than Prince Philip? I mean, that's a commitment to, a silly point, because the ghoul thing isn't about what he looks like. I mean, he looks like that because he's a ghoul, right? The outward manifestation of one's appearance is always in direct relationship to what you look at, what you are in the inside. You will see people who have genetic beauty. There's some people just have sort of a glow to them, and they have the physical features. They have, nicely proportioned bodies and nicely, whatever it is, beautiful faces, but they're not beautiful on the inside. And as they get older, you see this with a lot of Hollywood celebrities, they start to look demonic in some way or another. Like they start to, their inner world starts to show itself. And what was physical beauty becomes, as they get older, they just become ugly in some way. Not just because they have lines or wrinkles. It has nothing to do with that. Because you can be, if you're a saintly person, you'll exude this loving energy and you'll become beautiful as you get older. If you meet really spiritually developed people, they have a different kind of beauty. They might not have the, the model-like features, whatever the standard of the day is to define physical beauty, but they have beauty emanating out of the inside. And if you live a good life and you look at your grandparents, and of course they're old. People are old. I'm getting old, whatever, I mean, you just, as you get old, you can't, you're not going to look young. And again, defining beauty as something youthful, right, is another mistake. And all the illusionary things with plastic surgery and makeup, people try to address the outside, but don't focus on the inside. And so Prince Philip is a part of a royal family that has done bad things, a controlling group of people that has way more resources and power than any family should have. And there's mental illness and, inbreeding. I mean, there's all these genetic issues, but they still claim to have superior genetics, which in itself is the basis of racism and slavery and all these things, and oppression and colonialism and the, evil theories behind it. It starts with having superior genetics. I mean, all the cancel culture that's going out there, they should start with the royal family. And so for this person, who's like saying that I'm age shaming, no, I'm ghoul shaming, right? You should understand this. I was talking to my wife about this, and, there's not many places that I fit into just based in my appearance. In America, like she was talking about, well, are there other countries? Because America's going in such a negative way. But I looked into this. Of course, I have an attachment to India through the Heartfulness System, and they have these wonderful ashrams there that are going to be, safe havens in the future, in the collapsing future after the collapse begins. There's food built into these ashrams, and there's a community, and I just have an affinity for India from past existences, and I looked into maybe going to live there, becoming an Indian citizen. It's so hard, and the country's so hard, and I just feel more comfortable in various ways in America, just because this is the country I grew up in. And I looked into all these, people are leaving America for these other countries, but you're going to stand out like a sore thumb when you get there. As bad as you see America, all these, Trumpers who see America not being great again anymore, it's all these people in the truth community that see the way America's going, and you think it's going to be better somewhere else. And they, these other countries have their own corruption, they have their own problems and issues, and you're going to be a foreigner there. You're going to stand out, and you're not going to fit in. I mean, you might be one of these people that just fit in naturally. I mean, you might be a social person, and you might be able to make connections, and people just love you. Like, I'm not one of those people. But, it's just, even in America, because this is what we were talking about, you can go to certain places, and we were traveling, and you don't fit in. And the more, the older I get, the more my belief systems change. Like, I don't fit in with the heartfulness people. I don't fit in with, the people who are, Indian in origin. And there's so many liberals and, sort of new age people that do it that, I just don't fit in. I'm a fringe person. I don't fit in the truth community. And most places I go to live, I've lived all over the country. I've lived in about, 8 or 9 states maybe. And, the 4 corners. I lived in the Southwest. I grew up in the Northeast, moved to Florida and Atlanta. So I lived in Florida, Atlanta. So it was the Northeast and then the Southeast, right? Lived also in Virginia for a long time. Lived in New Mexico and Utah and Vegas. Lived in Idaho for a little bit. And so, all of these various states I've lived in. And, people who don't dress like me, or whatever it is. And so I was saying to my wife, like, the place that people are most like me is the Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York area. And she goes, well, why don't we live there? And I'm like, I'm not going to live around all those assholes, right? The people who are most like me live in that area. And I can't tolerate people like that. I can't be around people who are like me. Like I have, I hadn't talked to my brother's kids, my nephews, in years, but they were like a second family. They were like my little brothers because I lived with my older brother for a while. Like after I left my parents' house, I went to a year of school in Florida, and I moved back up to Connecticut, and I lived with my brother. And I was always going over to my brother's house. They were athletes. Some of my nephews played college basketball. We were all we played sports together, and they were like my little brothers. And they have families now. And I mean, one of my youngest nephew is my brother, because my sisters also have kids. But because of the chaos that I was going through with my ex and just, they started to have their adult lives, we, fell out of touch. We, weren't in contact. But when they heard about my daughter Anna and all these things, my, 3 nephews wanted to contact me. So I called them all, and we had this, these interesting conversations about our past and memories they have. Sometimes they listen to these videos, which I found interesting, right? So that was, it was great talking to them again. And then I, talked to one of my friends. He seeks me out every once in a while, every 2 years. He was sort of the person that was in charge of, the social aspect of, a large group of friends who, played sports together. We were on a same YMCA basketball team and things like this. But I just fell out of touch with all those people, from that area. I just don't like it there in that area. But it's a place where, I don't stand out so much. There's Italian-looking people there, right? I mean, my features and just how I carry myself. You go to places all around the country, and people look at you. I guess, places in Florida where there's some people from the Northeast, But there's, I guess, in California. But the places that I don't stand out are not places I want to live, right? People who look like me or people who, are like me in some way. And so there's all these places that are cool to live, but you stand out like a sore thumb. And, given what's going to happen in the future when things break down and everything becomes more local, of course, people are becoming more and more like each other now because of the internet, and you're having, sort of a one culture take over in this country. But anyways, to wrap this thing up, is that what I see now, which is very disturbing. I see it in the truth community. I see it with Trumpers and QBs and people on the right, and certainly with people on the left, they are now, everyone's like glued to like an issue. Let's say it's, about masks. They find out what their group believes in, and what the other group believes in. Sometimes it's what their group believes in. Sometimes it's what the other group believes in. And whatever the other group believes in, their enemy group. So if it's liberals, whatever the Trumpers believe in, they take the opposite position without using critical thinking skills, without realizing or thinking that the other side could be right. And that's how polarized our country is, that people are getting into identifiable groups, whether it's based in their ethnicity, their demographics, whether it's based in their religion or sex or sexual orientation. Everybody's grouping up, and they're really embracing their demographics belief system, and they're not thinking for themselves at all. They're not, when you try to talk to them about it and say, look, I'm not a part of this other group that you look down on, but, this is what I think about it, and here's my research, here's the reasoning behind it, and they just can't hear it. Everyone's becoming more and more closed-minded. They're becoming more and more prejudiced. They're prejudging things and thinking they know things that they really don't. And again, based in their faulty religious belief of God, because their religion has taught them a bunch of BS about God, or their religion of science, which is, a complete non-religion, but they are treating it like it is one, and it's not even based in true scientific principles, and they don't embrace this idea of chaos, which is at the center of their belief system. And so because of all of these things, people suck, right? Like people have taken sucking to a new level because everybody's grouping up, and it's more and more difficult to interact with people because they have these rigid beliefs, and I know where they come from because I watch this stuff on a daily basis. I know where their beliefs come from. Like I know where they're getting their indoctrination, and not that I'm right about everything, because I'm not. It's impossible, like, to be right about everything. It's not even about being right, but it's about, the humility to know that, like, you have to evolve. Your consciousness has to evolve. What you think is fact today is something that you'll see through tomorrow, right? That as your consciousness evolves and you'll mature, that these things that you're grasping on to bring some order to the chaos, right? To bring some order to, all the lies and the illusions and all the disinformation that's put out there, that you want something to cling on to. That's one of the big problems of the truth community, is that, you'll think something is a fact one day. It's just another lie, right? You've replaced your indoctrination from the government and the beast, the lies that you were fed as you grew up and things like this, your family lies and all these societal lies and illusions. And then you just replace it with indoctrination and misinformation that you got from fake truthers or, people who are lost, the blind leading the blind. And then you just replace your old indoctrination with something new. So all these people are saying they're woke or awoke, they're not any of those things. Because to be like, enlightened, and that's not a term that's used in the heartfulness system, you have to understand that your consciousness grows. That the way that you perceive, as you get closer and closer to God, and you see the world through God's eyes more and more, you understand, what's behind the, divine creation, and you become a more, realized spiritual being. Your soul is emerging, and you're embracing your soul. You go through various levels of consciousness and awakening, and then, each level comes with more understanding of the nature and the intentions behind divinity. It's just like when you're a young person, as you mature, you should be able to, grow in some way where your consciousness shifts and you see things in a new light. And so much so, which is the most important part, that miseries are divine blessings. Things that you thought were undesirable or bad for you end up being the things that help you evolve and shift your consciousness and change and all these things. Things that were tough to go through end up being the real gifts and boons of your life. The things that you were running to, like pleasures and, vacations and, happy things, are, those are rest periods. They're not illegitimate. They're good, but they're not you're not put here to just enjoy your life. You're not put here just to indulge. you have a purpose, and that purpose is challenges. And without challenges, you just fall apart. Without something, to overcome, those things strengthen you and they keep you, mentally sane and all these things. And so people need those things in their lives. They're the real reason for being here, to overcome these things effectively and grow your character and become a better person and get closer to God. And you can't do that by just being a pleasure-centered person. People want 100% pleasure and 100% happiness, and they don't realize that, the people who have those things, the people with money and, all the, power that comes with it to control their existence are miserable. The wealthy and so-called successful people and, celebrities and all these people just grow more and more in misery because it's not about those things. Those things aren't your goal. And when you achieve those things, you realize that they're false. And that's what, the heartfulness system is here for, is to help people endure the difficulties of life and, get rid of the impurities, the things that block you from realizing your true spiritual potential and manifesting the essence of your soul, like your soul emerging, past your ego and your, small self, and embracing the divinity that's within you. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano. Definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.